this month, instead of the City Commission and myself, we've also been joined by the Charter Review Advisory Board, as well as the City Clerk Treasurer, Ms. Smith. And of course, y'all know Mr. Zimmerman comes to these anyway. He put on pants for us today, though.
Because he loves us.
Yeah, instead of shorts, for the record. So, as we've said all along, the town halls are meant for the community to express concerns, questions, praise with us and feedback. And so that's the purpose here today. So, if you have any questions or any feedback or anything you'd like to share with the commission or city management or the Charter Review Advisory Board, we'd love to hear that today. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
If you want to add anything to that, sir.
Yeah, we're going to try to keep it a little orderly, a little more formal. We have a timer. We're going to try to keep comments to 3 minutes. So you may see us kind of nudge you forward when the time's wrapping up.
My man.
And we want to make sure everyone gets a chance to talk.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
yeah, can we get started?
Maybe just a little background. I don't know who here, just by a show of hands, who's heard about the charter review process that we kicked off several months ago? Okay, so great people. I always point out we have Riley from News 13's joined us this morning. So everyone's got to behave. We got the media here. So the last time our charter, which is the Constitution of our city, was updated, it was 1963. So at the beginning of this calendar year, the commission voted to put in process the charter review re-review process, and so that kicked off several months ago. And we have Ms. Cecile Schoon, Mr. Ron Dancy, Mr. Brandon Berg, who's the chairman of that committee or advisory board. We have Mr. Brandon Henderson Jensenius, who's the vice chair, and then Mr. J.P. Ferreira. So they're here today, and like I said, we just want to hear from y'all and questions about anything in the city or the Charter Review Advisory Board. Nothing's off limits. So
Yeah, let's get started. Who's first? There's always apprehension of the first person. Like, no, man. Just come on up. No, but come on now.
all right.
And we're done.
Let's go to the Waffle House. We say we do have fresh coffee and donuts from Dandy Donuts, and you're not allowed to ask a question unless you have a donut. That's the rule. So,
Well, if we don't have any public comments, do we want to discuss
I think that'd be
charter
great.
review? Who wants to start off charter review
Can
conversation?
we hear from what they're doing?
Yeah.
So we've been reviewing the charter.
Thank you.
No, we've had our third meeting, and as I've kind of been able to present to you guys during the city commission meetings, the first meeting was largely, what have you been assembled to do? Second meeting was kind of establishing a plan of attack. The charter's organized in such a way that a lot of the sessions interrelate with each other. They don't just necessarily, they are numerical, but they don't necessarily just, build up to some, big crescendo of a conclusion that everything culminates in Article 13 or anything like that. And so we divided up the things that tend to interrelate with each other, sort of like the city commission structure, the election structure, election procedures, and then break that down into the, like staff level type stuff. So the city manager, city attorney, city clerk, how do those relate to each other? And then we kind of drill down from that as far as we've gotten so far. Then at our third meeting, we had the League of Cities come make a presentation to us that sort of discussed at least like the different dynamics of strong mayor, weak mayor, commission-led, commission manager-led. Because honestly, we have a general idea of how city governance is set up, but I've never been exposed to how cities do it and why they do it and why some systems tend to work better in larger municipalities versus smaller. And so they did a great job kind of educating us on those things. And then we've started getting into the substantive meats of the charter recently. We've discussed the commission manager structure. We discussed a little bit of stuff about the definition of mayor. We've discussed the election and whether or not to include a mandated date, albeit I know it's not necessarily a full mandate, whether to align the election with the general election or keep it as an independent election. Discussion over the primary plurality versus runoff system. So the current system that the city uses is you have a general election, and then if somebody gets a majority of everybody, then they win. But if they don't get a majority, then there's a runoff. But there's different systems. You can also have kind of like a non-partisan primary system where whoever's in the top two, they go to the general election and then the winner goes there. You could also have you have one election with one day, and whoever gets the most votes, majority or not, they're the winner. And so there's been a lot of debate about that as well. And then so hopefully we'll get that wrapped up at the next meeting and then start discussing a little bit more about the mayor, city manager, city clerk, city attorney position, and then go from there.
I like it. I'll start by just kind of outlining some of the apprehensions I have around someone who's been through a campaign season. And so oftentimes, at least the way I sort of lead is not to tell people how to do things, but the goal where I want to go. And so I'm always apprehensive about any changes that would lengthen a campaign or make a campaign even more costly for someone. My campaign took 6 months, spent $100,000, not counting the first 2 months of me just going to lunches with people, 30 hours a week. And so I have, based off of that, if that is the metric of the only way you can get elected, then it's going to be very hard for someone who doesn't have a lot of connections and doesn't have money and doesn't have a lot of time to become elected and represent people. And so that was one of my concerns about any changes, was making and there should be a barrier to entry. It shouldn't be like, hey, one weekend I decide to run for mayor and the next week, 20 hours of work and I'm mayor now. It should be a hard process, but I worry about it being such a hurdle that if it costs $100,000, I mean, it takes hundreds of hours to even raise $100,000. So that was one of my apprehensions.
So are we allowed to speak? Are we converse? Speak? I don't know. I haven't been in the system yet.
Yes.
We just make it up as it goes.
That is correct.
That is correct.
Alan, you think there's a direct correlation between the length of election season and the costs to run an election?
Pretty easy thing to get to, yeah.
Yeah, I think you would have. I mean,
Like, you don't think you would just spend that same volume of money in a shorter period of time?
No, I think you would have 20 debates versus 2 or 3, and even having at-large elections for everyone, where everything turns into a citywide election for everyone. That's concerning because then you have to buy. I mean, I've spent $12,000 on signs, just even putting those out and picking them up, weeks of work. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's a certainty of days equal money, but certainly the longer you stretch it out, the more opportunity it has to cost more and time.
Yeah, I would add, I think there's a direct correlation with how many people are in our city and how much it costs to actually run an election. So in mine, it was about a 20K election, which is, we're about 1/4 of the city in Ward 4. So it makes sense that that's basically what our elections are running. My concern has been the voter turnout. So this last election represented the highest voter turnout we've ever had in our city's history, and it was 25%. And so, there is a direct correlation with voter turnout, the attention on elections that comes in a different system. And I'm not saying anything I haven't said before, but particularly the access to early voting dates, the encouragement on mail-in voting, it's all drastically different in a general election cycle versus a municipal election cycle. Not that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, but you can see spending $100,000 and you only get 25%.
We got $100,000 for 4,150 votes, which is more votes than any candidate's ever received in Panama City history.
It is.
That is a lot of money for 4,000 people to show.
And to your point, though, you're at large. We're not. We're in whatever districts, and you're at large. So if for some reason, somehow, some way, we wind up becoming at large,
That's how much it would cost.
Right.
so it definitely moves in that direction. For sure.
Well, let me share. There's been no appetite for that whatsoever.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, that was one of the quickest votes that we had was members that get elected by their district or from their districts by their districts.
Yeah.
That really, that's no desire to change that whatsoever. And then can I say one other thing, just macro, and then bring it back to micro? So I will say, and I'm just speaking on my own behalf here, even though the charter hadn't been reviewed since 1963, it wasn't wildly off. Like, I was expecting to open it up and go, oh my gosh, this is archaic and ridiculous and illegal and things like that. And it wasn't. And so the reason why that is because city attorney has also, as things have truly become obsolete, like illegal, or laws have changed, or cases have come down, that document's been a bit of a living document. So to say that it was just wildly off is not the case. As a matter of fact, I would say the first few sections they need some tweaking. They definitely need some review, but we weren't operating on just some, DOS system of operating system. We just weren't. Not only do we need on the charter review advisory board, want feedback, but we need feedback. We have our own experiences, but we're not experts at this. And you may have experienced something that's really nice hearing from the actual elected officials that have gone through this process, what their feelings are. But it's nice to hear also from the electorate saying, I would like this, I don't like this. It may not go in the charter, I don't know. But we've also promised to the city commission at the end of this, even if things don't belong in the overall charter, which is kind of like our constitution, they may be more like day-to-day things. We fully intend to give the commissioners a memorandum that says, these are things that citizens wanted that didn't necessarily belong in the charter, or we couldn't find a place for it in the charter, but please listen to their concerns and pass an ordinance or give some consideration to it. So nothing you say is just going to go by the wayside. And then the last thing I was going to say about the election stuff. Oh, the last thing is, this is me talking, and the other board members want to chime in too. What I'm finding is that there's very little that's inherently good or bad about any of this stuff. You can really weigh pros and cons. Hey, if you have the election and the general election, you're going to get more turnout. Just statistically, you're going to get more turnout if you're aligned with a gubernatorial election or a presidential election, which usually you would think, great, more people is better. You also probably get people that are there that aren't as interested in city governance. They're there because they're voting on the president or the governor. And by the way, I guess I'll vote on these commissioners that I have too, and they haven't paid attention to it. Where if you have an election on an independent election, everybody's there because they want to vote for the city of Panama or city of Panama City, right? That they're there for that purpose, but it's a smaller vote. And I don't know what's good or bad. It's interesting, but it's what I'm trying to do is talk to enough citizens and talk to enough elected officials to understand what fits our city. Like what experiences have we had? As a matter of fact, we debated term limits on commissioners. Should it be 8 years or 12 years? Because right now it says nothing. But then when we started debating it, and please chime in if we're wrong, I don't think we have a term limit problem for city commissioners. As a matter of fact, everybody that's elected right now the most tenured person, I think, is Josh, who's been here for 4 years.
Oh, term limits.
Sorry, yeah. So basically 4.5 years is what we're debating. So it's like, I've said this many times in our meetings, it seems like a solution looking for a problem. We don't seem to have a commissioners who've served for decades. Like, we probably have the opposite problem. Commissioners that are turning over and are trying to get their feet underneath them. Can I speak for Josh a little bit? He's like, it takes 2 years to kind of figure out where things are. Yeah. And so, do you want to stifle that where, and then the comment was, well, what about congressmen? How do you feel about that? And I was like, that's apples and oranges. Congressman serving for decades is not the same thing as my local city commissioner, being there for 8 years. So anyways, that's where we're at. Feedback is not only wanted, but needed. And then I'll get off my high horse here.
I'll point out also that everybody who goes to Congress has a full staff dedicated to just them.
Yeah.
And
We share an assistant with Jonathan.
Yeah.
And then we get Nevin, Jonathan, and Jan.
To share five ways.
Between the five of us.
I'll also point out that having gone and talked to other folks in the Florida League of Cities and the National League of Cities, places that have enacted, especially the tighter the term limits, the more you see the same people, and that's kind of a backwards result of what you would think you would get out of term limits. But what they wind up doing a lot of times is they'll have say a term limit of 1 term. And what winds up happening is that person's spouse then runs, and then they're back in, and there's a mixture there of just a kind of apathy in the city of nobody wants to run against this family, but what you wind up with is you don't wind up with the actual change that you seek by implementing those term limits. So that was actually pretty interesting to me when I went and saw that, talked to people, and really found out that, oh wow, in some places it can work, but on a statistical standpoint, it just doesn't achieve the results that people think it achieve at a local level. So, because again, how many people do you know are willing to run for office at a local level? It's pretty slim.
And on the matter of whether we should have the city election in conjunction with the gubernatorial or presidential election, I'd like to see the stats for voter turnout during the November elections, just for the city of Panama City. We're looking at the stats from everybody that turned out and not just the city of Panama City voters when we're with the latest data that I've received.
And that is just Panama City. There's a couple of them where it wasn't, and I indicated that with the asterisk, but a couple of them are.
Then that may not be the document I've looked at.
I'll recirculate it.
Okay, thank you. I was initially, upon hearing, when we discussed this, I guess 2 years ago, let's combine with the general so that we can get more involvement from the city. That doesn't mean that we'll get the qualitative look, as was just said, at what goes on in the city. I think the way we increase voter turnout is what we're doing now. More citizen engagement, more speaking directly to the people about issues that concern them. And we get people to come and talk to us when you've got something on your mind. Otherwise, there are very few of you who just come hang out with us on a Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Most of you go on your way to do whatever it is of importance to you that week. And I just want to say thank you to all of the members of the Charter Review Committee for coming forth to take us through this very serious and needed process.
I think one of the things we discussed in the committee was voter apathy. We're not going to have any change on that, no matter where the election is. There was a term called undervotes, having been in elections where it was all countywide. You have people that come to vote for the governor and the president and don't vote for anything else, and those are called undervotes. So statistically, voter turnout in the city may not be vastly different if we can get those numbers than it is during a November election. That would be interesting to see.
Yeah. What other topics related to the charter we want to discuss?
What was there?
What other topics related to the charter do we want to discuss? Just overall broad thoughts? Would
I mean,
that help?
that's so. I'm trying to think of what we've got.
One of the things we talked about is extending the mayor's term from 2 years to 4 years. It didn't seem to be real logical. I mean, in a way, maybe just to break it up and get the new blood and everything. But thinking of the impact on persons running for mayor, every 2 years, I mean, the $100,000 every 2 years, that's a choker. And that whole experience would limit the types of people who could run for that position. So there was some discussion about that.
Yeah, and as perspective, just as the mayor, and people, because of Hollywood and the mayor runs the city, and they have, in our system, we're a weak mayor system. So I'm a city commissioner at large, which is, I believe, what it's even called in the charter. And I have the same vote, I have the same privileges. I run the meeting is the only difference. And so for me, I've often thought, I get 4 times the emails, the ribbon cuttings, all the things. It's constant. And I'm like, well, there should be something I get for the bigger campaign, and that I should have.
You have to run every 2 years.
Yeah, every 2 years, and I get 10 times the email. I'm gonna start forwarding the emails I get to them. Yeah. Like, that's your district. And so I'm like, well, there's got to be something. I mean, I really wish the mayor was called a city commissioner, and everyone else is called neighborhood advocates. That's really what these positions are, is you're an advocate. Like, you can't, none of us can speak on the behalf of the city of like, yes, we can do that. I'll do that deal with you. Or yes, we're going to do this, because none of us have that authority to speak on the behalf of the city. And so it's like this false sense for some reason that the mayor has this sort of privilege. And I'm not asking for that either, but I threw that to Brandon of like, is there something that a mayor, maybe it's the agenda. I don't know what all the options are for the mayor. Being on this side of the oath, which is what Janice Lucas always says, it is an interesting experience in that, with sunshine laws, we can't speak to each other unless it's in a meeting like this. And
About issues that we're going to vote on.
Right. Yeah. And so oftentimes you get this agenda we can advance. You're like, well, what is this? What is that? And I would love to see, is there a potential conversation to be had around the elected officials controlling the agenda? Because so many times staff brings their opinions to the table and puts an agenda item on here, and I'm like, I don't like that. And then you get to make a definitive vote on it, and you're like, this isn't my idea. I don't even like these options. And so it often feels, for me, this is Alan speaking, that I'm, just customer service, which is fine, but sort of just kind of being pulled along of like, here's your agenda. Nothing's on this that you've been working on. Surprise! Now go in front of the news about it, and you're like, I didn't.
Well, a lot of boards and commissions and things like that, they work where someone would have a proposed agenda that's sent to the members, and then there's a solicitation of what else would you like to hear?
Yeah.
What else would, I don't know that would be something we'd have to put in the charter. That's more just a practice, but that's not uncommon for the reasons that you've stated. Otherwise, you just come into the trough and here's your hay and your water, you just go right on rather than bringing issues that you have.
Alan, can I ask the commissioners a question about
Yeah.
the agenda thing?
Totally.
Just bring it up.
Mhm.
So that was probably one of the most surprising things to me was how the city's commission agendas are structured. Not that there's anything wrong with staff doing it, but mainly I was thinking about it from a citizen standpoint is that the agenda can be modified up until the moment of the meeting or at the meetings. That's my understanding of things. So just for context for the people in the room, so I'm a lawyer and my main practice area is community association stuff, homeowners and condos. So about half those tall buildings up and down the beach I represent. And pursuant to the Condominium Act, every time we have a board meeting, we have to post our agenda 48 hours in advance so that owners can see it and decide whether or not they want to come to the meetings. So it was kind of bizarre to me because I took for granted that there was something in the laws, the municipal codes or whatever that said that an agenda of the meeting had to be posted in advance so the citizens could look at it and decide whether they want to come to that meeting or not. And I was told that that's not the case. Now, the city's not doing anything illegal, but there's no similar requirement for the city to do that as there is for my random condo association, which just seems bizarre to me. And so that's kind of a big thing that I'd like to ask the commissioners is would there be any reason, any practical reasons with you guys meeting every other week or twice a month that we could not post the agenda to the citizens 48 hours, 72 hours in advance so they have an opportunity to see it and then decide if they want to attend the meeting and also be prepared to give intentional comments while they're there because they know what's going to be discussed.
Well, while
It
there's
is.
no rule, we do that as a practice.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's the Wednesday before the Tuesday meeting, so it's posted
So-
almost a week ahead of time.
So the issue that Alan's addressing, though, is the core of it. Is yes, we could. Yes, it should. But what often happens, we get our agendas. Let's say we get a finalized agenda. We get about an hour prior to. I think now it's actually earliest. It's a little earlier than that, but we see it not very much longer before you guys see it on the finalized agenda. Well, let's say something finalized comes out and it's like, well, I want my counterparts to know about this. I want you're now processing something that now you've got, through the weekend and a Monday to get what your thoughts are out there to make sure that you're ready to vote on a Tuesday. And so it's really more of a staff practice on getting us items that would be on the agenda before they get to that point so that we can provide our feedback prior to getting that in that. And what Alan's saying true is the typical way that it works is we get our agendas. Jonathan's been very good about going with us and draft agendas and kind of seeing those things, but that wasn't always the case. My first couple of years, I wouldn't see a draft agenda until I went to pick it up from the clerk's office, an hour before it posted on the internet. And so it is better now, but there's nothing that requires that in practice, to your point, Brandon. So new city manager, different city manager than Jonathan. There's nothing in the charter that requires them to post anything, do anything differently. They frankly don't have to provide us the agenda before the public gets it. We can get it at the same time.
Yeah, you're touching on the perception from the public and the citizens is that we run the city, the elected state. Au contraire. And Jonathan's amazing. I'm so impressed by Jonathan. But you can have a city manager who wants to whip votes, and it's their vision, and it's yes or you're not shaping policy. You're answering for it. You're getting complaints from it, but they're shaping policy. And so I'm so thankful for Jonathan to allow us to help talk through things early on and allow us to shape. But with a city manager who carries the vision, you are, as an elected official, just being pulled along the river of the time, and you're flailing, in my opinion. So I would love to see the elected officials in some capacity, and I don't know how to get there, be strengthened. Other cities, they can fire department heads and things like that, but you are.
Or hire them.
Yeah, you are. I've been using the word
That does
advocate.
not mean you're after firing.
No, I'm not.
I should say that right now.
No, I'm not trying anybody. I'm looking for ways to actually make this where you are more than just an advocate. I mean, you are an advocate twice a month in a city meeting, and that's you've got 1 minute to, educate. Like, I'll give you an example. This is a silly example. If I loved blue slides, playground slides, and you loved yellow is your favorite color, I'd be going, Jonathan, blue slides are cheaper and kids love them more. And yellow slides, you're telling the other officials, oh, yellow slides are the way to go. It's just the prettiest color in the world. I can't talk to you to convince you that blue slides are cheaper and the kids love them more. And it all goes on the dais, and you're like, I don't want, it's clear that yellow slides don't work. And, you love yellow. And so you can't communicate and to other elected officials. And it's an interesting Jonathan's been great at, collaborating, this sort of thing.
We would just go with green slides.
Well, Alan, there's two parts to that. Number one is, and I fully respect what Josh is saying, and my intention is not to debate this, but I want to make it very clear to the citizens that I, as the chair of the board, and maybe this doesn't happen, but I really do want to put a complete charter in front of the commissioners that they approve wholesale. That's the goal. Like, I just, maybe that's not the right goal, but it would be nice since this charter has not been picked up for 60 years, to have nice consensus for what it is, and then it gets approved by the commission, and it gets approved by the citizenship, one whole thing. And I can be talked out of that, but that's where my head's at right now. So I really appreciate this debate now. Sometimes, so my head is at on the notice issue is honestly not for helping Josh, for helping the citizens, for you guys to be able to see, there's meetings, it's I know you guys are scheduling them to try to get more citizen input in the mornings, and I get that, and people are busy, and we talk a lot about more citizen participation and input and transparency, and I just see this being lockstep with transparency by announcing in advance what you're going to talk about at a meeting, and we can create emergency catch-alls, believe me, but the general idea is what's going to be discussed. And then sometimes when you add, to Alan's point, when you add friction to the system, sometimes that's good. Like that sort of leverage there by saying, hey, staff, we have a charter mandate. This isn't some internal goal where me as the mayor, because I'm going to come down with an iron fist if you don't get this done, because you don't have a lot of tools at your disposal. If you can put this intentional friction in the system, it's kind of easier to enforce it.
So my concern with that is enshrining it into a charter. Let's say, for example, in a charter we say that the agenda has to be posted 2 weeks in advance prior to a meeting. Right? Sounds reasonable, right? I have fought, and I'm sure those of you that have been on here with me for a little while have fought for over a year to get something forward. And so sometimes it'll even be approved by the commission, and it's still 6 months to 8 months later before it actually happens. And so my concern with that is just slowing the process down even more, because I did 20 years in the Air Force, and I thought the Air Force was slow. I thought the government, federal government was slow, and then I came to the city and didn't know, realized that I didn't know what slow was. That's probably one of my biggest frustrations being in this seat, is how slow everything can happen. I understand why, and sometimes I've actually been thankful that things have actually slowed down. But that would be my concern with it, is that we would
just for point of clarification for me and maybe others. When you say slow, what do you mean by slow? Slow to get addressed, slow to get on the agenda?
all the above. Everything.
Quick question.
Everything.
The charter is our opportunity to, one, create a standard, but also raise a standard, right? And in my companies, we have a 24-hour responsive communication policy internally and externally to ourselves and to our clients, right? We now have information readily available at our fingertips, right? Everybody does. How do we get our city so that information is readily available at our fingertips? And the question is, do we the powers. So we're going to talk about soon the powers of the mayor, right? Should there also be a conversation about the powers of the commission or the commissioners? What would that look like? If you got, do you guys feel like you don't have any type of autonomy when it comes to writing the agenda or bringing agenda items specifically to the commission?
The best you can do, and this is what I've been using for citizens. They say, like, we want more blue slides. I say, I'll advocate for blue slides. But if he, like I'll say, Jonathan, the blue slide, it's his job to get everyone consensus built or it all blows up on the dais and creates toxicity. And you want that discussion in the public eye, but everything runs through the city manager at such a high level that you could just flail and the city manager can control.
So Alan, what you are literally saying, and also Brian, is the access point for the commissioners to get things on the agenda. That's what you're really talking about.
Yeah.
Right? But like like I said, other groups, the executive puts forth, maybe a week before would be the standard, I think. A week before the meeting, or even 2 weeks before the meeting, because you can see some things coming way down the road. So maybe 2 weeks, whatever, time before the meeting. This is the proposed agenda to all the commissioners. What would you like to add on?
Right.
And there's an open gate, unless it's ridiculous. I mean, we would have a conversation.
And I would agree, because if the city mayor, and Jonathan's great, this is more concern for the next mayor and the next city manager if the city manager is the gatekeeper on the agenda and I want to talk about the blue slides, he just goes, no, we're not talking about it.
So let me add a little bit more fidelity to how this usually works, right? So let's say that
Which has happened to me before, by the way.
let's say I want blue.
Not with Jonathan.
I want to talk about having blue slides, right? Like, let's say I want to change all the slides out, and I want to talk about it with these four, and do that. That's not a problem at all. Jonathan, team, they'll put it right on.
But there's no requirement.
There's no requirement.
No requirement for it, but I mean, other than I can just come to the city commission meeting and be like, hey, as we're doing changes, before we're doing changes, I want to talk about slides. Y'all want to add that to the agenda? And then if they agree with me, then we'll add it, right? But what I'm talking about is more complex issues where I say, hey, I want to analyze all the slides in the city and see if maybe we need to do something about the color of those slides because maybe it's burning children. I don't know. I'm just making this up as I go, right? But that's more of an analysis, which tends to be a lot more of when we bring a problem forward, we tend to try to analyze it first because I want to have a solution before I bring it to them and say, hey, I think this is a good solution. Here's an alternative solution. What do y'all think? And staff has to analyze it. So that process is what really gets stretched out.
So another aspect of what we're talking about on that point about analysis, each of us has questions and concerns. And so on a given week, the city manager could be getting 5 different analytical assignments.
Yeah.
And
That never happens.
Because, there again, we have to go through him to get what we want. Or as what's beginning to happen, we have commissioners delving into doing our own research and our own, and I have some questions about that as the policy board. Do we then do our own research report, present it in the agenda item, and then vote on it? And so that's a concern as well, because the checks and balances of the city manager and the city commission are what we're talking about, and how to do that in a way that is fair, so that we are, Alan's a big guy with a big heart, and he's the mayor, and so he can get big things done. And so the perception of the public is, we'll just go to the mayor and he can do it, right? Yes, and so the nuances of what we're talking about is what should be in the charter. But I would ask the clerk, what is between the charter and what we actually do? Do we have policies and procedures as a city? Where some of this could go that doesn't belong in the charter.
We have rules of procedure. They're posted on the website. It talks about what kind of meetings, what can be done at each of the meetings. the process of the meetings. I think the only thing that speaks to the agenda is that the clerk controls the agenda or produces the agenda. I'm not sure of the exact language, but I can't remember the last time I told a commissioner, no, I'm not putting that on the agenda. If it comes to me, it goes on the agenda. And unless the agenda's already been posted, and then they can always add it from the dais. So I don't think there's anything in the charter that speaks to the agenda.
Yeah, and so just adding, I'm so thankful for the people we have up here this is already a hard system to navigate through to get something done. If you have very strong clerk who's gatekeeping an agenda and a city manager who wants to run with his vision or her vision, you are powerless. And so all my comments are like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful for these people. But if they're not here and there's another mayor, they have no ability to navigate the situation. It all depends on the three people you have. I've even said recently that the city attorney can steer this ship more than one elected official, because anyone who's able to go between us to build consensus of what they want, they have the real authority in the city, and the electeds do not. These folks don't do that, I believe. They're very much sort of the pleasure of the board, and I'm so thankful for that. But the next folks, I have no problem speaking on behalf of the board. We have worked very, very hard to remove the names of the people from the seats from the decisions. Okay, yes, you're right. Jonathan's doing great and Jan's doing great, and I'll fully disclose, me and Alan are great friends. We talk regularly. I'd like nothing more than to create the strongest mayor system possible. Alan, here's the keys. Take us to the promised land. Off you go. But you can't design a Ferrari and then be pissed off when somebody else takes the keys to it and runs it into a ditch. Yeah. So that's not lost on us at all. So it's really focusing on creating good governance that will last a long time, that accomplishes the objectives and balances the freedom for the city to run quickly and get things done, but also make sure the citizens have an opportunity to participate and know what's happening, and transparency, because transparency does take time. And I'm not saying that in a bad thing, but it's, what's really fast is don't tell anybody what you're doing, rule with an iron fist, and just go. Dictatorships are very efficient, right? Right. So we don't want that.
Right. And so there's a balance there. So anyways, you brought up something, I wanted to share that.
Yeah. What about you said the rules of procedure? Participation. So with the charter, we don't want to step in and overrule and have all these different things that you guys can't change or don't have flexibility. We also learned that charter can be not adjusted, but changed based off of ordinance, right? How much of this stuff should we leave outside of the charter and leave in your hands to make an ordinance about? What about the rules of procedure? Do you guys have an opportunity once a year as a team, as a board, to review those and approve those and say, this is our set of standards for ourselves for this year? Every year we're going to review these, and should that be a charter item where you're held accountable to reviewing the rules of procedure every year?
Rules of procedures of a meeting?
Of the meeting, of the city structure?
It's revised on a regular basis. For example, we had a clause in there where if the meeting was going to go past 7 p.m., they needed to vote to extend the meeting. They didn't like that rule, so that rule got removed. So it's just basically on as needed basis. It's been changed, I think, 3 or 4 times in the 4 years I've been here. So I would say that.
The fact that we're here this morning is an example of a rule change that the new mayor brought in that moved public participation on the city commission regular meeting from that meeting to 8 o'clock once a month at a town hall, where you can come and talk with us about anything. Otherwise, the rule is that public participation per meeting is limited to what's on the agenda for discussion that day. And so that's a rule change that we implemented
Alan,
just in the last few months.
I don't want to lose sight of public participation. I don't know if anybody's got it. There's probably been enough tossed around at this point. Somebody's got some juices going.
Well, as we're waiting for you to come to the podium, I do want to say though that like in my regular job, I deal a lot with federal regulations on companies that want to do business with the federal government. And so I like the direction that you're going, because it doesn't necessarily tell us how to do it, but it tells us that, hey, you have to review these policies every year, right? Or every 3 years, or whatever y'all come up with. I like that, because I still think that this commission and future commission should have the freedom to to kind of decide how do they want to do business within a framework. And I like the idea of, hey, you should address certain aspects of that framework on a time schedule.
And in a formal setting, right?
Yes.
If we're going to make a change, this is the time of the year we make the change.
Yeah.
We don't do it when there's a problem, so we're not constantly chasing the urgent at the expense of the important, right? So there's a time period, but what is that time period? We actually talked as a board about every 10 years having a formal charter review.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe that aligns with the census. We had talked about that in our meeting as well, but having that inside of the charter where every 10 years there is a board that is built that says, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So every 10 years, we're going to not wait 60 years to review the charter, but let's provide clarity every 10 years or so.
That should never overrule as needed as well.
Correct.
Right.
Yes, sir.
You don't have to give your address, just your name, so we know who's
Okay.
talking. Yeah.
Virgil, Virgil Marshall. I want to thank the commission and the city for diving into the Robert and Mary King Park at Oak Grove Field. My question is more for the city manager. With the purchase of 2 additional parcels, one in 2005 and one in 2008, which seems like there was an intent to develop the park, can we find out where the breakdown was, why it never got developed? And then 2, if everybody has an opportunity to submit $1 with their water bill or any of those funds within a 3.5 to 5 mile radius being utilized in that. Okay, that's the other one. And then the other one would be, why did we get less than what we had before Michael? In other words, they used it as a dump. It was a baseball field. The foul poles are still there. Simple oversight would have moved the fence in closer to the foul line, which would have given you parking on the street and different things like that, like we had before. So I just want to know where the breakdown was. And then obviously on the meeting that Commissioner Lucas has set up, we'll look at some other things, but I want to see where the breakdown was with the city.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. So I'm not honestly sure where the breakdown happened. I've been in this position about 18 months. I would defer to others, but I'm happy to look into the development plans and some of the history behind that. And just Mr. Marshall was referencing a meeting that senior city staff and Commissioner Lucas is hosting specifically about the Robert Mary King Park. It's November 13th at 5:30 p.m. It'll be at the St. Luke Missionary Baptist Church at 1500 Fountain Avenue. So do hope that many, many people will come and be a part of that. So
Virgil, prior to redistricting, I did take about 2 stabs at trying to get that park expanded into the area that you're talking about. Mr. Dale Cronwell and a few others from the Public Works Department surveyed the site, went back there a few times, and determined that it's wetlands, and so that's what ultimately stopped the further expansion south, or I guess that's northward than that. I'm not saying that it couldn't be done from that standpoint, but to answer your question, that was the piece as far as from the funding question, this predates me and my understanding, but I do recall when I stepped in, it was pretty much still left as the dump site. So I came in 21. It was the dump site at that point. Even still, we were able to cobble some funding together, working with FPL on lighting and getting the irrigation and the grass put in. But there wasn't anything else beyond that at that point. Not that that makes it right. I just want to give you the context of kind of how it's phased. I do think it's a good time to relook at that, and maybe we relook at even the wetlands portions of the back, because it's kind of weird. There's a fire hydrant that's in the middle of the woods. Not really sure how that ended up there. But anyway, I just want to give you what I knew, and that is the summary of everything that I know.
Do I have still more time? And this is just for us to try to solve some issues. My understanding that the first parcel was purchased from Mr. Smith with the hints of making it a walking park. So I don't know if that worked on there. I think it would be like a little bit over a mile walking park.
A boardwalk would work.
But if we do what we're supposed to do, then we don't have the current issues. The other thing is we've had 5 directors of Parks and Recs, and now we're looking for our 6th. Maybe we can fix that by getting somebody that's not going to come in and take off. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. I can speak to that as well. And y'all heard Commissioner Street say Dale Cronwell. If you don't know that, he was the former city engineer, and he retired about 18 months ago. But he'd been with the city over a decade and probably had 40 plus years of civil engineering experience. So we are in the interview process for the Director of Parks, Culture, and Recreation Department. We received almost 80 applicants. The assistant city managers, Mr. Jones, Ms. Waldron, along with our HR director and assistant HR director, Ms. Lewis and Ms. Smith, are going through the pre-interview process right now. Of those 80, they've got about 15 or so really good candidates that they're going to interview, and bring that down to 4 or 5, and then I will do a second round of interviews and make that choice. But it is my desire. I share some of the same concerns that you expressed today, Mr. Marshall, and I'm going to commit myself to have that be at the forefront of my decision as we move forward. I'm looking for the long term, someone that is going to be here, someone that considers in a lot of ways, Panama City and Bay County, more than just a place to come and work and have a job. All right.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. First, I will start off by saying I prefer the main floor. I got lost a little bit.
It is elaborate.
Yes. And that's why I brought my walking shoes. The other thing is...
Can you just say your name for the...
I'm sorry, Michelle Bryant. Yep. In addition, I appreciate the charter coming and sharing their thoughts and you guys debating and having conversation. I would ask if this could be at the end of this type of meeting, and I say that because as a citizen, to be able to get the attention of the entire commission, including the mayor or commissioner at large, we have to wait till 8:00 a.m. on a Saturday morning. And let me tell you, it's pretty hard, but because of my dedication, I show up here to be here at 8:00 to be able to bring my concerns to the commissioners and mayor. And so I had to sit and wait, and it's 8:48 at this time, right? That we could have already gotten our suggestions out from previous meetings. People will say what they have to say and they leave. They grab their coffee and their donut. Thank you guys for the coffee and donut as well. But this could have been a Zoom or another meeting. So I just wanted to provide that feedback that you have people who here that have things to say that are typically here and they had to wait. So appreciate the information, love it, but either a separate meeting or a Zoom, just like you guys have your meetings as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
Ms. Bryant, we actually led with that. I don't know what time you arrived, but
I had to give here.
We first opened it up to let
Questions?
whatever they
Okay.
wanted to talk about, and
So I missed that part.
yes, ma'am.
So I retract all that.
Take that off.
So yes, I take that off. Correct me when I'm wrong.
All good now.
So my concerns today, kind of similar to what the gentleman before me just said about the hearing, different part, for the Marion Robert King Park. I have personally, with PC Senior Living Group, approached the city about adopting a park. And what we were told is that there is no such program in the city limits of Panama City, which I found interesting because it's everywhere, right? That is an actual benefit for a city to have an organization use its resources, rather financial or manpower, to help a city with a park. So when this particular item was brought to the agenda, I was kind of taken back because they were literally looking to exclusively manage a community asset or a community park that should be accessible to all. And so my thoughts or my suggestion to share with the city today is, how about take baby steps? Let's start and create a program where entities that are interested in any type of city property is that they adopt a park first. Show their love for the community, the asset itself, invest in it, And then the next step could potentially be, hey, let's see about working a partnership. Of course, you want a community space, a park to continue to be a part of the city, but more importantly, take steps to show proven steps that they really care about the community as well as that city asset. The other thing regarding the wetlands, Commissioner Street, that you mentioned, if you could provide that documentation that shows that this was a wetland, I will say we've heard that several times in several communities. We can't develop, it's a wetland. We can't develop, it's a wetland. And then when the documentation comes back, that's not what it was. So not questioning you, but just would like to see that documentation. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Michelle.
I'm sure we got.
Can we talk about adopt a parks?
Yeah.
I would love that. Yeah, well, does anyone else want to speak first before I go into my adopt a park rant? Yes, go ahead. Because I love adopt a parks.
Can I sign up for the coat part?
By the way, I'm kind of liking having 10 commissioners.
Yeah, I bet you would.
I bet you would.
Be careful what you ask.
I don't,
I've got 10 meetings.
Gets a commission.
Yeah.
I don't think Lindsay would enjoy that.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
My name's Kelly.
Hey, Kelly.
Legally, Kelly Chanelli, Kelly Fuqua. I'm Cameron's wife. He's the director of the St. Andrews Soccer Club, and I know that's caused a lot of controversy of late, and I just wanted to come and present because I think some things have been misconstrued with our goals, and we are really on the same page, right? We want a community park that is thriving for all people. Right now, we're sustaining 150 students of all over, but 95% of our students are 5-mile radius. We are Panama City Central. We're the only competitive soccer club that is in Panama City. And currently there's no dedicated soccer park to this area. So Kings Hammer, Surfs, they're all on the beach. So we believe that it is very good for Panama City and their students to have this type of organized organization that is central to Panama City. We love the idea of expanding this area to the wetlands in the back, if feasible, to include more parks, walking paths, and playgrounds, and everything of that nature. We are not asking for exclusive use. Never have. That was a word that was taken out of context. There is one field. It is a field the size for a 9v9. Usual soccer games are 11v11. Again, we have 150 students right now that are practicing on a regular basis twice a week. For the club sport, once a week for the younger kids, 5 to 10. And fields take a lot of wear. If you go to Frank Nelson, that is more dedicated for a football space. There's a lot of grooves and divots in the ground. That is unsafe for students, of course, if those things are not rested and grown and leveled. So when we first came with our proposal, it was for 600 hours or so of time throughout an entire calendar year. It is a very small portion of what the park is open for. If it's sundown to sun up, we practice 2 hours at the end of the day, which would include sundown, especially now at this time of year. We're asking to just have the field managed in a way that is safe for everyone, including community members. We are not asking to control the park in any way. We want it to grow and flourish in the same way that everyone else does. And we love the ideas of having playgrounds and everything and develop there. Of course, as a soccer organization, we are concerned about the integrity of the field as it stands right now. And we want to support that with partnering with the city to help with maintenance, to help with sodding, to help keep it level. Right now, when it rains, it takes an excessive amount of time for it to dry just because there's low spots and puddles that form. And then that ruins the grass that's already there. So I just wanted to come and say that and clear up the air. We are on the same side. We are definitely not we want more kids to come play, right? And seeing the park from before we started working there about 2 years ago, and just seeing the in and out and the kids coming, and people will come up during our practices, and we love that because they see soccer and they join and play. And for students right now, it's screen time, it's video games, and being able to go out and play and to be with other kids and the social aspect and the mental health aspect, that's our goal.
Yeah. So we want to keep comments to at least around 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, one of the common ground that we can build on is nobody's happy with the current state of that park, right? And the attention the city's been giving it for years. I think we all agree on that for sure. And I would agree. I mentioned that to Virgil on the phone the other day. There are clear patterns of success when you have friends of such and such neighborhood adopt a park, and that's one reason why downtown, in my opinion, has flourished. Is the DIB is that sort of consolidated view from. Otherwise, we as elected officials are running around to 35 different people, and everyone's arguing through us. And so, anytime you can get people to gather together and talk, things move quicker. The Waterfront Partnership in St. Andrews, Glenwood's got its own revitalization group as well, and so that's why I love adopted parks as well. Mr. Pickens.
We only have 3 parks in Ward 3. So just let me know.
Ward 3 is one giant park.
Yeah, that's it.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hank Picken, 820 West Beach Drive. I know you're looking at me and saying this is like a bad cold, it won't go away, but the continuing saga of West Beach Drive was the subject this morning. I sat in some amount of fascination this morning through about a half-hour discussion about changing in the charter. To me, that's a study in form over substance. The substance really is transparency and discussion and intake from the population. And I'm here today to tell you that because Mr. Hayes would not answer our questions concerning West Beach Drive, we took it upon ourselves to set up a meeting with the FDOT and went to Chipley and met with Mr. Smith and Mr. Chamberlain to find out the exact facts that surround this path. And this took place on September 30th. And during that meeting, several things were confirmed. And up until this point, they've been rumors and discussions and so on and so forth. But number one, they confirmed the fact that the city is not getting the road. Number two, they confirmed the fact that the city cannot move the curves. So therefore, there's no possibility of shrinking the road. And having said that, they also confirmed that the right-of-way from the east side of Dagama to the bridge is as narrow as 45 feet in certain places and is narrower than that in a few others. That leaves the available space in the right-of-way to something in the neighborhood of 3 feet. And not all of that right-of-way is on the south side of West Beach Drive. So the idea of building a multi-use path on the south side of West Beach Drive becomes highly difficult when the space is not available. And they did confirm the fact that they reviewed several working concepts as to what the path could look like within the constraints that have been outlined by the FDOT. Those designs have not been shared with us. And my biggest concern is, the rumor is that in a couple of weeks, the city plans to go to the commission and ask for additional money to design the path east of Dagama to comply with the regulations that the FDOC has laid out. And clearly, with the FDOC guidelines, that path is going to be greatly diminished versus the original design that was approved by the commission, but dead on arrival at the FDOT.
Jonathan, would you like to give us an update?
The other fact is
that
we
want to keep things around 3 minutes.
I'm sorry?
We want to keep things around 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll finish up.
Which is the dinging.
The other thing that everybody should know is that FDOT has reimbursed the city for about $750,000 of the $1 million that have been spent. 80,000 of that is legal fees, and they don't intend to reimburse the city for any legal fees.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
First off, I would ask I guess really everyone but Commissioner Hughes and Mayor Branch, but I believe to the other three commissioners, I have multiple times said from the dais, they're not transferring the road, or shrinking the lanes. Have I not? Okay, thank you. Yes, we are in communication with FDOT, and they have indicated, as I've said multiple times, that they don't want to transfer the road. And so what we have asked them, and this is based on some feedback, in one-off conversations with the commissioners, is, we want to know exactly what they will permit, because it is not my intention to bring anything back to which the commission would have to approve any modification to the concept that they approved prior, concept 3. And so, but I know that there's no support. I don't support it, and I know that the elected officials would not support it unless we have some type of guarantee from the FDOT they would indeed permit such a project inside of their right-of-way, specifically to Mr. Pickens' point, on the east side of the path, before we spend another dime on redesigning it, because if you're not able to shrink the width of the road, that does drastically modify the path and would require a lot more engineering. And I don't want to spend another dime on that unless I have some type of written guarantee from the FDOT that they would even consider such a thing. So that may be on the November 18th meeting. We're still waiting on some things from FDOT, and if not that, perhaps the December meeting. But that would be to consider a different concept, and then, of course, a task order in order to, again, basically redesign the whole path, almost starting from scratch. So that's where we are, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Have you shared those sketches with the rest of the commission? Does the rest of the commission know how much that path is going to be degraded to fit the FDOT requirement?
I have verbally shared it with them, yes.
Yes, sir.
Verbal, but no sketches.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Ross McCoy. It sounds to me, Mr. Hayes, like we're here because the city over the years has not done their homework. The first conversation that should have taken place with regard to West Beach Drive would be to go to the DOT and ask them, what can we do with the road? Instead, the city has spent over $1 million, a bunch of it that in attorney's fees, to get to the place where now, which is a dead end, and you have to start all over again, as you said. As we understand, and I've been to Chipley too many times and talked to the directors up there as well. I understand you have, and you have too, Mr. Street, and that you two have gone to Tallahassee to talk to the governor's office as well about all this. But as I understand it, this new design that's been applied and has been forwarded to the DOT, which Mr. Pickens just talked about, is going to have a skinnified version of about a 3-foot path that's going to be right next to the roadway for about a third of this project, from the Johnson Bow Bridge to about Dagama. And if you're spending this kind of money, then I think you need to let the public know about that. And we went to a great deal of expense and hoopla to have concept meetings last fall. We had several concept meetings. There were a lot of people that voted. If you recall, the majority of people that voted for concept said, we don't want a path. We don't want a path at all. If you're planning on spending more money, I think you need to have another concept meeting and show the public what it is that they're going to actually get. Pull the shell off the pea and let them see this is not what's been told to us over the years. And I mean years, which is the third year. Many of you, 4 of you, were not on any of this. Mr. Street was the only one who's lived through this entire debacle, this entire sneak attack. We feel like it's been a sneak attack along. And if you're not going to give the public the right to see the new plan, if you want to call it that, the skinnified plan that looks like what you have on the north side already, I think you ought to be ashamed. I do. And I'd like to hear from you as to whether there is going to be such a concept meeting, if there is a design other than the ones that you've already submitted, which have been turned down.
Well, in defense of everybody up here, I mean, the path started in 2012 was when really some of the initial conversations, which was before all of us. That was when Bernicki and Katie and all those folks were up there. But feel free to answer the questions. If
I'd like to address one thing on the road transfer piece, and to act like the city has not been following a unified process from the beginning until now, doesn't take into account the fact that when we asked for the road transfer, which was done in a public vote by a commission, granted the commissioners over here were not in that specific meeting, it went through every layer of FDOT approval. The only way to get a federal highway transferred had to involve a willingness on the department to send that to federal highway, which it did. It made the signatures to, yes, we're willing to consider transferring this road. That went to AASHTO, and it was granted approval at the federal level. And then when it came back to the state level is when the process stopped. So to act like that there has been no level of transparency in that process, or a communication that there would be a willingness or a potential willingness to transfer this road going through this design process is just not true, because you can go and public record request every single transfer agreement, letters that got sent into federal highway, letters that came from this commission, all of those things to see that clearly there was at some point at least a high probability or a reasonable probability that they were willing to transfer the road. It was only through further advocation and a lot of different partners at the state level through their advocacy that they were able to kill that process.
Mr. Street, when did you first hear from the FDOT that they would not transfer the road or allow the skinnified road that had been in all these concepts?
At the same time the rest of everybody else knew about it.
What is that date?
I have no idea
what is that date, please, Mr.
I have
Hayes?
not had any in writing conversation or anything like that. We knew that there was an issue with the road transfer sometime.
It was December.
Yeah.
I got a call from Mr. Smith December of last year.
Okay, there you go.
But it took a lot longer for them to communicate that in writing.
Has it been communicated in writing?
Yes, I want to say Maria, I can't remember her last name.
Showalter.
Yeah, Showalter, that's right. There was an email where that was alluded to. I can't remember if it was her or Mr. Skurlock, but there was an email from one of the, what I would consider mid-level staff at FDOT that referenced the road not transferring, and so they want to consider additional concepts. So what we have responded to FDOT was, they're like, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking. Would like to see some potential concepts. And so we've done that. That really hasn't really cost us anything. It's really just very high level concepts. And again, what I've asked for, and again, before anything moves forward, the full concepts would have to be shared, that we're looking to move forward before any type of redesign would absolutely have to happen. And again, we're wanting confirmation from FDOT that they would indeed even permit such a project that is more narrow on the east end of that. And until they're willing to do that, frankly, we're not going to keep going back and forth with the commission. So at such time that FDOT, which they did recently allude to the fact that, so that's why we're looking now to formally move it forward, because we have something in writing based on some feedback.
Because we've gotten communication before, such as like on a road transfer, that says, yeah, we're willing to do this, and then all of a sudden it's not. My advocation was still pushing for a public meeting, because the public still hasn't gotten to communicate on whether or not they would like a road transfer to happen, which I have to tell you, in St. Andrews, the people that I represent want Beck Avenue to be a locally controlled road. Why? Because they want to be able to enjoy it as a local controlled road rather than having giant tanker trucks roll through their historic district.
So, Mr. Street, you knew in December of last year that the DOT's position was there was not going to be a road transfer and there was not going to be a narrowing of the road. And in the spring of this year, you were the one who wanted to have a referendum, a lopsided referendum at that, for the public to vote on whether they wanted to have this road that the concepts now are all in the trash can.
Ross, I'm still going to advocate for a road transfer. I will never stop advocating for a road transfer because the citizens that I represent want a road transfer. So that will not end regardless of administration or regardless of anything. I'm going to continue to advocate for the things that the people that I represent want.
What was the purpose of the referendum?
To advocate for the things that we want as a community. Okay. And it's very clear what the community wants.
And this is months after you knew that the DOT was not going to allow the transfer of the roadway.
And what do you think we did with the referendum? We continue to advocate for what the community wants.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Hayes, I'd like a copy of that written notification that you received from Michelle.
Okay.
Please.
It might have been Adam. I'm not sure. We email with the FDOT on a myriad of issues every single week, so I will find that email and formally, and I'll even look up what date I received a phone call from Mr. Smith.
My many meetings that I've had at the FDOT, I have learned that this commission, some of you who are new, knew about this many months ago, well before this referendum was even alluded to. That's all I really have. Those are my musings on West Beach Drive. I would like to thank Cecile, Ron, and Brandon for their work on the Charter Review Committee, but I also would like...
They're on the, sorry, JP and Brandon.
These two as well.
He stands by what he says. Hey, guys, he stands by what he says, all right? I shouldn't, my bad. Rob, you're very wise. I appreciate that.
But I would like to get back to what you mentioned at the very beginning of your comments about the agenda. And that is, I know we now hear what it looks like from your side up there, what the deal is with the agenda and adding things and blue slides or yellow slides. On this side of the dais, we want to know what's going to be talked about. We don't want there to be changes. We don't want to show up or not show up at a meeting and find out that the city has now entered into a contract with private enterprise to do something with a marina.
Right.
Or to be honest with you, do something with Panama Grammar. Don't change, if you're going to put the agenda out 72 hours, which is good, that's laudable. Don't change that and have additions to the agenda that sometimes are important.
Yeah.
So either put it in the charter or put it in your own procedures, like Ms. Smith has said. Please.
I like that. Like you can have you can have like deletions but no additions. That way no one's ever surprised you don't even move.
Yeah.
I like that.
Alan, if I could speak to that?
Yes.
I do think that there are things that are so foundational to due process and notice to the public, and notice now that I understand to the commissioners, and your ability to add into the agenda is critical and foundational. And for those reasons, I recommend it go into the charter. It is that serious. I mean, been on a lot of committees, and like you said, that's the chokehold.
Yeah.
Who controls the agenda? Who has the notice? And this is something we fight with the state legislators. They, over the years, have narrowed the notice, and they have exceptions to exceptions. And you actually get really important legislation that they give to you Friday at 4, and they want to have a hearing on Monday, which literally means no public is able to come, just, paid people and other groups that are sitting around trying to get involved. So this issue of notice is really, really key, and not something that should be, once it's fixed or organized so that people know, and transparency, it shouldn't be anything that's easily changed.
So one recent example that I would say kind of goes against the idea of not being able to add anything is Commissioner Street last meeting brought forth, hey, we need to have a plan for the military and federal employees, right? So I would be very adverse to anything that prevents us from being able to add, because of there's sometimes there are emergency type situations, and then also you need to have that flexibility.
Well, you could call a special meeting for that one thing.
We can't call special meetings.
Maybe we should be able to.
So what's weird is in the charter.
You can call special.
Tomorrow.
The charter was written before the Sunshine Law, so two of us can call a special meeting, but we can't talk about it. Right? So I can't call him and say, "Hey, I want to call a special meeting." And
Actually, I think you can.
I think we can. I can't
Only for
say
that
that
purpose.
but I can't say what it's about. Right? Like that. It's such a gray area that we
You know
don't.
what's about. You can't say your opinion.
Yeah, right. Like it's so.
That makes no sense.
So things like that really definitely need to be taken a look at. But yeah, he can call a special meeting anytime he wants because he's the mayor. That's
why we're here
That's
today.
one of your
Yeah.
powers.
I know. Meeting every morning at 4 a.m.
I'll be here.
I don't know that you'll get a quorum.
Speak me and Jonathan eating donuts.
Yeah.
I would add to that though and say that water policy in that moment, great idea. But there are things that you could be sneaky with, and that's what we want to avoid. And so I think to overcome that, call special, making special meetings easier to call. potentially might.
So the opposite example of that was when it was the marina, and I'm not trying to get too much into the marina discussion, but the situation that happened is that we had received a term sheet. It didn't make it on the agenda, and we all had it that night, and we all agreed that it was not proper for us to vote on anything with that because it seemed like it would be very sneaky and shady. So that was kind of another good example of where we had the power to do something and we chose to do the right thing, in my opinion, which was to do nothing with it. Because it was not advertised, because the public didn't get a chance to take it, digest it, ask questions.
But again, the policies aren't about us, it's about the next
Understand.
people.
But
not everyone's
how do
as
you-
honest and smart as we are.
Yeah.
The pushback on the notice thing is, y'all meet twice a month. So even if something didn't hit the agenda because it came up during that 48-hour or 72-hour notice, you're meeting again in a couple of weeks. And if it's so important that it has to get discussed, then a special meeting can be called. So I have had nobody provide to me a situation where it's so important and it's so critical that we cannot tell the public what's going on 72 hours in advance or call a special meeting or meet in the next 2 or 3 weeks, whenever the next meeting is. I just don't know what that scenario is that says public, it's so critical that we have to do this right now and you guys can't get notice of what's going on.
Then propose that any commissioner can call a special meeting.
Yeah.
Because right now I can't.
I think we should discuss that under the powers of the commission when
Yeah.
we
I
also
mean, that's-
discuss the powers of the mayor, right? And
Yeah.
what does that really look like? We can't have a special meeting for everything because not everything can be a 911. But for the avoidance of doubt, we've seen that before, that sneaky stuff gets added to the agenda. And it's not emotional side, remove the negative component from it. Like, it's stuff we need to talk about, but is now a decision-making time at a board meeting, a commission meeting. We're there to make decisions, right? We're not there to discuss as much. It's a decision. Can it be tabled? Can it be prioritized? But you guys having flexibility to say, let's have a special meeting if it is a special meeting. I think that could be something we discuss as the powers of the commission.
So one thing I'll just add to this conversation, which is very, very relevant. Typically, even on that policy, I think I provided what I was wanting to the agenda before the agenda was done. But the way that our agendas are produced is it's a staff-heavy process, and we don't have staff. Like I said, the 5 of us share a administrative assistant with the city manager. So that is the only administration staff that we have beyond the three chartered members. So what is difficult, whether it's having to do with research, whether it's having to do with, preparing an item, any of those things, there's not the personnel really to support us providing our own agenda items other than us, just doing it ourselves, which I think is what you see with a lot of us. Like, I probably spent on a couple of the things that I've done, I probably have spent 80 hours worth of preparation into something that essentially I just had to go through and just keep asking questions over a period of like 3 months before I could get it to that. So I think there is an administrative bottleneck that comes in agenda prep because your commission does not have, we don't have an administrative staff. What we have is 3 chartered officers and then 1 personnel that we share. That's really what we have.
So
do you have access to that staff as a resource?
That's a great question.
No. I'll let somebody else answer.
And this goes back to accountability versus responsibility.
It's
right?
yes and no. We're allowed to ask questions. Like, we can ask all the questions we want, but we can't, and I'm not advocating for this, but we can't go to, say, a director and say, you will do this.
So they could take a month to respond to us until Jonathan or one of the other charter officers steps in to say, hey, you need to answer this question.
So let me ask you guys this. Accountability versus responsibility, right? You're ultimately accountable for the decisions.
Yeah.
Correct? But are you responsible to spend 80 hours looking for the answers that drive that decision? Like Jonathan is, as the city manager in the current dynamic, right? The city manager system. Jonathan's team, which is staff, is responsible. Jonathan's accountable. So what would responsibility look like from staff and prioritizing 5 commissioners, because Jonathan gets to deal with this too, 4 commissioners, right, and 5 with the mayor. What does it look like that your staff supports the top 3 initiatives? Because not everything can be a 911. Not everything. I mean, I wrote down Mary Kane Park. We hadn't talked about Mary and Robert Kane Park for 6 years. Now all of a sudden we're talking about it. It wasn't something that was a 2025 initiative. Neither was Charlie Kirk Road, right? But we took a lot of time and effort away from the things that have mattered over the 7 years, like the marina, right? What are our priority items? And understanding some things are going to be, but what does responsibility look like from staff up? And is that clear? Is that something we need to review in the powers of the city manager?
I think going back to my point earlier that you also were pushing down, which is that we need to review annually. I think it would be nice if the charter required us to come up with city priorities for each budget year.
Strategic planning.
Yeah, strategic planning.
Strategic plan
But-
or a top goal for each ward.
But by putting it in the charter, it actually has teeth. Because we can sit here and we can say, hey, we think these are all of our priorities. And then each one of us goes to the city manager and says, well, I want this thing specifically for my area. And part of that's good and proper, right? Like there's things Ward 3 needs that, maybe Ward 4 doesn't necessarily need and vice versa, right? But having those overarching priorities, I think, tied into, hey, this is, and I don't know how you codify that, to be honest with you. I mean, kind of
Cascading it down too. Each ward and you guys over your ward have a strategic workshop with the residents of your ward. What are top 3 things we want to focus on as a ward next year? Anything else that comes gets added to the list, but we prioritized as a ward, as a community, these 3 or 5 things, right? Other things might come to the table, but right now there's not a clear process for how do you prioritize any of the stuff that gets brought to you.
Well, what I would be afraid of out of any of that process is the ability for anybody up here to go to the city staff below Jonathan's purview and be able to order something.
Tell them.
Right
we
now,
don't,
that's
we
a
don't need
misdemeanor.
that power.
Yeah.
Right.
Isn't it?
That
I
would.
think it's a misdemeanor for us to talk to
Yeah,
staff.
exactly.
It is.
In the charter.
In the charter.
Yeah.
It's against the law.
To give order.
To give order. That's right.
Alan.
Yeah.
Let me.
There's an
There's an explicit line in there.
There's an explicit distinction between being policymaking and being management.
Yeah.
And so we are to direct the policy that then the city manager manages. And so the process that we're talking about now, not the process. Let's take, for example, the Robert and Mary Kane Park, right? You've got a community that has a sense of something's going to happen at the park, and you have a soccer club that says, oh, nothing's happening here, and we would like to do something in exchange with the city. And so we get a proposal that has come to the city commission without having had any citizen engagement of the people who feel like it's their park, right? And when we start looking into it, there's been very little process that Parks and Rec has followed, including our own rules and regulations. So we've got a soccer club that's been using the field without any paperwork from the city. It's been a gentle person's agreement. And so it's created some sticking points. And when we are talking about this now of management versus commissioner policy and commission policy making, that's where some of our sticking points are. So the strategic plan may also need to be for city direction of management so that the city manager clearly understands and the departments clearly understand these are the directions we're going in. Because right now, I think we get whoops. Right? We, the commissioners and the mayor, get something in our heads and on our agenda, and now staff is like, but we're running this, and now we've got to stop and do what the mayor or the commissioners want to happen. And so a way to address that may be what is being suggested here, but I think it's certainly something that we need to talk about, that we are reactive as opposed to proactive and intentional about some things. And I don't want to say that the management of the city is terrible. I'm just saying that in this process, we're looking at how to make our city better. Yeah. And this is one of those areas.
In software companies, which is what I do, we do a roadmap meeting where you decide your priorities over X amount of time, and then you have these, there's a bug that comes in, and there's some flexibility. And talking specifically about that park, if we had agreed, and I agree with everything you're saying, but in practice, and I love strategic workshops, but if they would have come to us and we would say, sorry, we're doing no resolution on this park until next year. Would that be a sufficient answer to have? I mean, I don't really know. For me as the mayor, every week there's a new crisis of like, you have crisis hour on the hour. For me, it's like every week's this new, like, I can't believe we haven't solved this. I'm like, I didn't even know about this thing that had happened. And I called Mr. Zimmerman like, wait, what's the backstory on this thing? That's 5 years. Nothing about. And so I don't, strategery also requires you to say no to things, but in some situation, yeah, strategery. I don't really know how to, the George Bush thing, actually. I don't know how to, in that situation, I don't know if it's an appropriate response of just saying.
But it's
Yeah.
not a one-off.
Yeah.
I mean, since I've been on the commission, we had a proposal for Chapman Park from the Dugout Group that was very similar.
Sure. Yeah.
But we did not address a process going forth, and now we're back here again. But strategically, if Parks, Culture, and Rec had that already worked out, adopt a park, how we contract with sports groups, park usage, that would be. That would be what we would be following, and it wouldn't rise to the commission as an emergency.
Yeah, I agree, and I would love to see a framework that works better. And from Jonathan's perspective, he's dealing with 5 people pulling and pushing, and staff's getting pulled and pushed 100 different directions, 5 different directions potentially. And that's a lot of times when we talk about the government being inefficient and bad at communication, it's so clumsy. Because leadership is pulled, this position's pulled so
we
much.
all are.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, Brandon, like it, and this is just coming from a 4-year perspective. My week is mostly fires.
Yes.
And so to try and say, hey, I've got these 5 objectives and these are, which we've done before, which I think work very well on these higher arching objectives. But there are times, we've had times that we couldn't get grass cut because we didn't have enough personnel. So guess what? Mark and I went out there and we cut grass on a weekend. Jonathan was a part of that process too. I mean, there is charter wise, we are responsible for policy, but community wise, there is an expectation that we go beyond policy to help meet the needs that are in the community that we represent. And so I would be very concerned about anything that could take away of our ability to advocate for the people that we represent on the needs that arise, because there are a variety that I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I guarantee you there's going to be something. Somebody's water is going to get cut off. There's going to be somebody got blocked. As a matter of fact, while we sat here, I got an email from somebody last night saying like, hey, did we have any complaints on noise complaints? Because there was a big party down in St. Andrews last night for Halloween. So yes, probably there is somebody that is ready to complain. They just haven't gotten to me yet at this point. And I think that's the piece where we need to have overarching objectives. I think that's something that could be looked at in the charter, and that could be the case. But I do want us to not take away the ability for us as elected representatives to advocate in the way that we need to ultimately get things done for the people that we represent. So
I think Mr. Zimmerman, he was going to speak to the misdemeanor comment, I think. Everyone's hearts and minds at ease. Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
There's this wonderful legal term in the charter that nobody knows what it means and you can't look it up, and that's why it's wonderful. But the term is city commissioners may not deal with city staff except through the city manager. Now, what does deal mean? I think it means more than obviously just talking to them. I've always felt they can get information, they can ask questions. But deal, in my mind, means direct. When I was county attorney a few years ago, I was actually around when the county went to a county manager form of government. Yes, and we had already had paper by then. It wasn't
Devin rode
just
his horse.
stone.
He rode his horse there and got his buggy tied it up in the front.
And commissioners, we had a road commissioner, and we had, the commissioners kind of divided up what departments they ran within their district. But in the early 80s, it went to a county manager. I don't think the term deal was used, but it was direct. And the whole concept, and that's how I've always approached the word deal in our charter. You can't direct city staff except through Jonathan as far as his employees go. So that's how I've interpreted it. It is something that we've had to deal with the issue in the last few years.
He's not pointing to me as though I'm rogue. He's just doing that. Just what's up, no.
Only guilty people.
He's been quiet all day.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, I think a better word could be used in the charter as an example when we get there, but thank you.
So Alan, sorry, go ahead.
May I, I think for the new guy here, one of the frustrations that I've run into is, and we were just talking about, is lack of process. And process does a few things. Makes it easy for staff, makes it easy for us. But more importantly, it helps y'all understand what it is we do a little bit better. And if you want to participate, which we gladly invite, it allows you to understand how you do it. I get a lot, I don't know what to do. Who do I go see? Good, neither do I. Let me call Jonathan. We're gonna have some, we just voted on some framework for process of unsolicited offers. We're gonna try to input that. When we're talking about the idea of how to set up the talking with staff, there's a process that we have to go through. But y'all don't know that, okay? I had to learn that just by asking questions. So what's the best way for us to operate? Let's find those areas that have holes in them and let's create a framework and then put it to you guys so that you know exactly what it is we're talking about. I mean, I want to try to make it at third grade level, okay, and make it easy for all of us to understand. And that's the process typically does that. And that's the world I live in in what I do. It makes it easier.
Yeah. Can we talk about adopting parks?
Yeah. Al, can I ask one more just charter question?
Oh, yes.
One for the other advisory board members. We may need to start being quiet here. We won't get invited back to the next meeting. For you guys as commissioners to please ponder is like this process is kind of illuminating to me. I thought we'd get done with this thing and be on your desk and off we go. And there's a lot of collaboration here. And I'm running, and I think the other board members are, please chime in if we're misguided here, that we would largely have a charter to you guys, late spring, early summer, that's pretty much ready to go. Like everything's buttoned up and then you guys approve it and off you go. Obviously it's ultimately the city commission, just so the public knows, it's the city commission that would even approve proposing this to the citizenship at all. Not that there's been any indication of this, but we could put the brightest, shiniest charter in front of them and it doesn't go, or they could revise the whole thing or any of that type of stuff. So I want to avoid a situation where you guys are redebating every provision and, duplicating all the time that we put into it. Not because I've got some pride in our time, but that just seems, it'll never get on the ballot in November if we go through it and then you guys go through it too. So just kind of think through how we can collaborate with you guys, because a lot of times we will hear things, we'll get input from the public, which on a tangent, if you really want input, obviously the city commissioners as well, but come to our advisory board meetings. I mean, Daniel can attest, he was there, and hopefully you feel like we heard everything we may not have agreed with everything, but you certainly had your voice heard. I don't think that can be debated, right? Okay, so we need input. So come to those meetings and participate, and you'll get a chance to really be involved at a very high level. But also what I'm kind of just debating, and I keep going back to these founding father concepts in the Federalist Papers, where you kind of explained why the things came to that conclusion. So not only how do we make sure that we can get that information to you guys, not only the strict black letter of what's in the charter, but perhaps what our debate was and what our logic was in putting it there, and then also getting a degree of free feedback, kind of like from what y'all have saying, where we're drafting this thing, and I use this in the law term, like almost in this ivory tower, in this vacuum, like, oh, this sounds great. And then when it rolls out, we hear feedback, that's not how it's going to work, Brandon. Like this is not going to happen. So there needs to be some collaboration there. So this probably isn't the forum to do it now, because this will bog everything down. But will you guys please give that some thought and then let us know how we can work together on this?
I think we do another one of these, or maybe it's a special workshop like this where you're kind of pitching ideas and before everything gets totally solidified. Where I think this was very productive.
And some of this stuff all works together, and that's kind of what we've realized as a charter board, is that you move one thing and then it kind of affects another thing, and we talk about the notice and then that kind of dovetails. So it's, anyways, there needs to be, I think, a cooperative process moving forward.
My worry with putting too many agenda items in here to discuss is we lose the open public conversation time.
I agree.
And that was the original genesis of this, was for people to have real exchanges with us, citizen to citizen. So maybe we do a special charter.
Yeah, y'all think about
Thunderdome conversation.
think about that and work through Jonathan. So Nevin, please help me. So this is clear to the public. Commissioners can speak with advisory board members freely. There's no sunshine issues with that, right? If commissioners can speak with us as an advisory board freely without any sort of sunshine issues.
Right. That's correct.
Okay.
The key is a commissioner and an advisory board member on the same group or entity that would be voting together? And the answer is no.
Okay.
Because the commissioners don't vote with the advisory board. You vote separately on your own commission. The advisory board members vote together on your committee.
So that would be my ask of you guys, is to ponder that, help, tell whoever you appointed to go through the city manager how you would want that collaborative process to work.
Not just come to your meeting and have an expanded, all the electeds go to your charter review committee meeting like in a few months.
If it's publicly announced.
Publicly announced.
I suppose.
Or you could give us an agenda that we go back and discuss and we provide feedback back.
Well,
to you guys.
these are all things to talk and figure it out. And yeah.
And I would say to achieve your goal, we have to bring the community along. So some series of meetings that are open, like what we announced here, that they come. Charter review isn't sexy, so people aren't just going to come because we say charter review.
I disagree.
But if they know specifically, we're going to be talking about setting agenda items, or we're going to be talking about whatever the aspect is. Because what happens quite often with government is we have a special blue ribbon committee that does all this hard work over 6, 12, 18 months, and they present their baby, and then the public just tears it apart because they haven't been a part of the process. And so I think it's important that we do specifically have those. And it could be when the commissioners are discussing, that they come, they being the citizen, or we go around to each ward and have at least one meeting where we're talking about this with the commission or commissioners.
So, Alan, unless my fundamental premise is wrong, which you guys can absolutely disagree, if the commission's posture is, advisory board, take it as far as you can and then put it on our desks and then we'll take it from there. You're not going to offend me. You don't have to announce it today. But if it's kind of the spirit of it is, let's get it in a nice, fine format where we're going to all approve it because we've all had input on it and then we get it to the citizens, then I think we'll go about it a little bit differently.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to clarify that if there's more than one board member or more than one commissioner, then it needs to be noticed. If you want to meet one-on-one with anybody, that's a different animal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love more discussion further along when you guys have more items to talk about. And so to me, feel free it's on you guys whenever you feel like there's not clarity of a path forward to bring us into your meeting saying, hey, these are our scheduled noticed meetings. Everyone needs to be there at this time. We meet here, there, wherever it is, for us to bring you more opinions of how it works.
Jonathan, will you make sure that every board member has our contact information too? So if you have questions, I'd make myself available for anything if you just want to hear a perspective on any item. So don't hesitate to reach out.
The last point that I'll make is for the citizens, there is an email. It's charterreview@panamacity.gov.
That is correct, sir.
Please email. If you want access to, that all gets disseminated to us. We all see it. That is by far, either come to the meetings or send us an email. They all get read and debated and everything like that. So it's a great way to get input. So I'm trying to get that email address out there publicly.
Yes, sir.
We do have meetings on Zoom as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we're right. Come on now. Yes, sir.
Morning. I hope you all had a safe and fun Halloween.
Yeah.
Derek Thomas, 1100 West 10th Street. I came to here this morning through Beach Drive and on the block west of Balboa. The overgrowth is closed off the sidewalk to there's about 2 feet. And on the east side, it's starting to close off too. So I think you need to maintain the sidewalk on the north side of the street. The bicycle pump on Lake Caroline, there's a bicycle bicycle work station there. That pump still doesn't work. Last year, there was no pin in there to open up the valve. Now the pin is there, but they closed it so that the rubber is already compressed, so there's no way to get a stem in there, so it still doesn't work. I guess it's the same way at the workstation at St. Andrews Marina. I'd very much like to know, when is the work on the abandoned railroad track that connects downtown with the rest of the city? You have the right to develop that into a multi-purpose path where you don't have to deal with cars, you don't have to deal with the noise, you can just be in nature and move back and forth without having to worry about it. It's safe. I would like to know when that is going to actually start. I look very much for your 5:30 meeting on Thursday down here to talk about the marina. And I'd also like to say that I've seen city workers being forced to do work on private property when they know that that's not right, and they are forced to do it through a work order. They have to choose between their families or doing what they're told to do. And it's not right. And I've asked repeatedly for you to give me the name of the person that wrote that work order, and I'd like to see that work order that shows that they were forced to go out there and do that. The last meeting at 7:40 in the morning, there's a city worker out there finishing the job because the owner did 90% of the yard and then ran out of gas and left. And the city workers are out there less than a week later finishing the job for him. That's not right. I'd very much like to know why I can't get the information I've asked for. You know, in Washington, D.C., they have a bunch of parks set up so that you can go into the park and move through the entire city. And there's a row of trees on either side, or there's a hill on either side, and it's beautiful. You go there, and it's quiet, and you can see just green stuff, and you can move around the whole city. And it's beautiful. I mean, you had the opportunity with that abandoned railroad track to do that and not put the cars and the people together, but separate them and make it a beautiful thing. Also, even though the bike workstation doesn't work, directly across the street, you just put in new signs. You have a plan to put like 120 signs along Beach Drive, something like that. I would rather see just nature. You don't need signs advertising stuff from 1950 from the railroad and mining company. Just leave it beautiful. You know, let us see the natural world instead of a bunch of signs. And make it safe for the people to get around the city if they use a bicycle. Please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just speak briefly. I'm aware of the sidewalk section. I run along Beach Drive, but as we've talked about, that's a state road. It's not the city's responsibility on the north side, but I'm aware of those stretches, so I'll flag that with FDOT. I know the sections you're talking about, and thanks for flagging the bike pump. I know it's tough, but you know that it's used a lot, and so things break, and so I'll make sure a piece.
But adding to, feel free if you see things like that, you just email us. You don't want to wait a month. We want to get those things fixed. We want to hear those things. So there's little things like that we can do quickly. Just shoot us an email. We can send it to John.
And for the stuff like what I've made records requests. Sunshine Law requests for information, I don't want to talk about that off the record. Yeah. I want to talk about that on the record. There's too much stuff being done off the record in this city.
Yeah.
When I first came in, they said, you can't even ask why the property taxes went from 1,000 to 15,000 over 2 years. Because that would be, it's mandated to be done correctly, so you're not allowed to ask because that's an accusation, it's slander, is what they told me. Nobody can say anything because it's slander. And then they brought everybody in off the record, and they offered to let me set my taxes at whatever I wanted it to be. Because I came to the meeting because I got a property tax notice that showed that
the mayor set no taxes.
How do I put that Yeah, that's the person across the street from me is still paying taxes on $26,000. They paid $80,000. They invested $36,000, but didn't file a permit, and now they're still paying $26,000. When that's not what the actual value of their property is. So when I see city workers out there doing work on their property, I know that I'm the one paying for it through taxes. Yeah. He's not paying for it because he's not paying taxes on what his property is actually worth.
So any concerns about evaluations of tax is really, that's a property appraiser. Yeah. So there's a board of adjustments that there is and all that sort of stuff too. That's where that comment would go.
Yeah, but it's like when you know, that they cemented shut the drain and then 5 years later decided that they hadn't and said that never happened. If you say it happened again, we'll have you arrested. And I didn't like that.
I wouldn't like it either.
And then I found the work order, and that's the only thing since this whole process started that they've paid any attention to. And now when I ask for the work orders, they just don't give me the work orders.
I will. I'm actually researching your comment from the last meeting about moving flooding of potentially other people's properties from leveling up. I'm researching that actually right now. So.
Okay, well that's good. I appreciate that because they went in this 30 feet past the property line, dug a big hole, and then brought the dirt back and used it to build up the back end of somebody else's property. Yeah. That doesn't help the person whose backyard has been turned into a swamp. It doesn't help the neighbors who've all had thousands of dollars worth of damage physically to their properties or had to spend thousands. And everybody around me is bringing in truckloads of dirt to try to raise up their property to deal with the flooding.
Completely understand.
It's just, they designed it 75 years ago, and it worked for 62 years, 4 months and 3 days, and then the city cemented it shut. They brought sandbags to stop the flow of water to the drain long enough for the cement to dry. But, you know, if it was just going to be a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I look forward to the meeting on Thursday at 5:30 about the marina, because I think that the public needs to get more involved.
Well, for the record, the 10th is about the meeting, is about the marina. Thursday is all things Ward 1, not specifically the marina, but I'm sure there'll be some conversation about it because you're going to be there. But yes, sir.
I just want to speak.
I just want
Yes,
to adopt
I promise.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about everything on Thursday. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll just speak to one thing about like private property. So I know a lot of times workers are in the right of way or in an easement, and people may assume that's private property. The only time that I'm aware of in my time as city manager where we actually stepped over the meter for a private property issue was the Sabiston issue at the direction of the commission, along with the Sabistons and their plumber and a representative from the city manager's office, Mr. Jones. When other than that, yes, employees do not work on private
If you
property.
suspect it as a citizen, take a
I'd like to
picture
know
of
about
it.
it.
Just
Yeah.
snap a picture and send it to us, and we'd love to,
Yeah.
I have, Mr. Mayor, I have a copy of the work order that was sent to Mr. Thomas on Thursday. So I'm not sure.
I didn't
You haven't checked your
check my email.
Yeah.
Over the last couple of days. It is there.
So the public request was responded to on Thursday.
Okay, and the information is there.
And there's a copy of a work order here.
Thank you.
Okay, and it will
Sir,
originally.
you've had like 10 minutes at this point, so we want to.
All right, well, it said in the original easement that they'd abandoned it after 6 months, but it also says the city will come up with a method to address the runoff, and that hasn't happened.
Thank you. Yes, sir. I would love to talk about adopting parks. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir.
I promise I'll let you get to parks.
Yeah.
Okay. How pleased I am to be here at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. I just want to say that.
Almost 10 now.
Not just, oh, yeah, right. It's almost 10 o'clock. You're right. I've been here for 2 hours.
Just say your name, sir.
Daniel Schultz.
Yes, sir.
And not just any Saturday, the Saturday after Halloween. Just joyous to be here with you. So, I came today, the charter. You know, this is a really important committee. I want to stress exactly what Brandon said. Please come out. You know, this is a really important board, and what we're talking about is important stuff. I came specifically today to advocate for the idea of changing the election dates from the municipal cycle to the November cycle, so that we would align more with the presidential and the governor's race. Jonathan sent out a memorandum last week where we compared the turnout from Panama City to the general turnout from the municipal to the general, and it's substantial. I mean, something like from 30 to 70%. Is that accurate?
70% for presidential and 50+% for gubernatorial. Almost
Yes, that's what
double.
I saw.
Almost double for gubernatorial.
Right. So, you know, as elected officials, our number one charge should be participation, should be at all costs to try to root out apathy, to do everything that we can to get citizens involved. That should be our number one goal. I think it's a clear textbook look, just like Jonathan said. If we look at the numbers of it, more people turn out to vote, more people do vote, more voices are heard. One of the major complaints that I had heard, and I know we've talked about this previously, is that the possibility of politicizing the nonpartisan municipal cycle. Something that I totally understand. I was a candidate myself. I totally understand. We already have partisan elections. I want to make that abundantly clear. We have a Republican Party in Panama City that hosts a Republican-led debate, which is televised on TV, which no one, if you're not a Republican, including myself, which is not a Democrat, I'm a non-party affiliate, I'm not affiliated with either, was not invited to participate in that debate. And it took a private citizen calling the network who recorded it to get me the same amount of airtime on air. So we absolutely have partisan elections already. We have allowed ourselves to become partisan, not our city, our country. We are partisan from the top to the bottom. And when I ran, I can tell you that the national issues apply just as much as the local issues. People ask constantly, they want to know where you stand. I think it's time to, look at our less than 20% turnout and be ashamed of it and say, what can we do as an elected body to get more people involved in our elections? And I think this is one step of many that we could take. Thank you.
Wow, that was impressive. 3 minutes to the dot. Pretty good. Huh?
Anyone else? Now can we talk about parks?
Fourth time's the charm.
Oh yes, sir. Come on up.
I'm talking about the adoptive.
I need. You do need to come to the mic, just because we're online and we're recording. So.
Wait, hold on. I got a bunch of more charter questions real quick.
No, we're joking. Come
Isn't it? No, it's 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock.
No, we still got 12 minutes. Lock the doors.
Virgil Marshall.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Branch. I like the idea of Adoptive Park, okay? And I'd like to be involved in adopting the Robert and Mary King Park. But let's do something first. Let's get a new director, let them get their feet on the ground, 3 to 6 months, figure out all the parks, and then we'll look at that. Let's not do anything rational with the Adoptive Park. I'd say postpone it, not table, because table means you're going to do it at the next meeting. Let's postpone it. And once we get a new director, which this will be a key part of what they're doing, then we can look at all the park issues across the city.
I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm certainly not advocating right now Adoptive Park today.
You couldn't even if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So pretty excited about it, man.
So much, but being up here, so much trying to get something done is about momentum of an idea.
Yeah.
And so to me, and a whisper of a great idea, if not elevated, gets lost in the shuffle of all the emails that we get. And so I would love to see when the new director comes in the new year, reaching out to the public who wants to be involved in the parks, who wants to be a voice and a volunteer of the park. Greenville's a great example of neighborhood groups that the city communicates those 30 groups or so, and they consolidate the feedback and they bring it back, and it's much more efficient. So that's what I would advocate for this next year when we're ready to have an adoptive park system. Yeah. Anyone hate adoptive park ideas?
No, I actually like the adoptive park idea, and for citizens to know how to get involved, what the process is, what does it take to move forward. Right now, I think one of the reasons we have some of the frustrations we're talking about on the commission is that they know, call the commissioner, call the mayor, but as we advertise different approaches and processes, and then to make it uniform across the city.
I love it. Anyone else about adoptive park?
I think it's a great idea.
Yes, thank you.
There you go.
I'm glad you thought of it.
It's the most amazing idea I've ever heard a mayor come up with anywhere specifically. Thank you, Michelle, for bringing it forward.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll just review it next year as a part of our strategic plan.
Yeah.
With the park. Anything else? Anyone else want to chat about something else?
Is that one question?
Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
I promise I won't be wrong.
You're good.
Well, maybe not.
I love these meetings. This is my favorite part of this job. these meetings. They are, because it feels like we're having real exchange.
Conversation,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and we're sitting lower than the citizen too. The dais is a very unusual experience. Being like, it's weird.
So again, Michelle Bryant, my question is, when it comes to the city, and this is probably directed toward you, Mr. Hayes, when you guys are updating your buildings, your community centers, can we get an earlier advance notice when that's going to happen? As you know, PC Senior Living Group, we reside on Thursdays at the Glenwood Community Center. We were advised last week that we wouldn't be able to meet there. We'd get a new location at Daffin Park the next Thursday. I'm very flexible, was okay with that. We'll make it work. Then I got an email yesterday that, it would also include the following week. Something's changed and come up. But can we get at least maybe a 30-day, 45-day notice when you're offering programs in a city facility where we could adapt and change our scheduling? For example, with PC Senior Living Group, we literally put our schedule out, our schedule 6 months out in advance. And so we have activities planned. And if you know anything about seniors, change doesn't really go over very well. And so now I got to go back and tell them, no, not only next Thursday, but the following Thursday, on the Thursday before that, we got to find another location. So if we could get an advance notice, we would greatly appreciate it. We are not by no means not wanting the upgrades that are apparently going to happen to Glenwood, but just an advance notice would be awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
I would love that. Probably with the exception of emergency repairs.
Yeah. I'll just, one thing I've noticed about, staff is, they always want to try to, under promise and over deliver and not miss windows. And so what the environment that creates is they try to wait till closer so they actually have a firmer grip on the timeline and the scope of the project. They also like to, instead of saying, hey, we're shooting for, to be done the first half of October for a project, say Streetscapes Phase 2, what they'll do here downtown is they'll, and I'm not saying they've specifically done this, but I know it happens. They'll push it out a month because, it being a longer project, like people are more okay with that as opposed to if they said the first week of October, then something happened and it was delayed, then they feel like they've let this community down, they've let the city commission down, they've let the city manager down. And so I see that. So I think that's kind of a two-way street, that if we do give that notice and then it shifts, to me, I could see that being equally frustrating, especially for someone that's done a lot of planning and work in your groups. But I think it's fair, and we'll see. Again, that kind of laying out that scope, because we know we've got a lot of work to do on our parks and some of our facilities. So we'll try to do better. Thanks.
It wasn't bad.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyone else? We still have 4 minutes. We just stared at each other. 4 minutes.
Just for I think since we have the board of the charter review and y'all together, we've talked about the agendas quite a bit, but, keep in mind so much of what comes forward from the agenda really is initiated either by projects that are kind of approved or blessed by the commission, but they're above the $100,000. And so I don't have that authority to actually approve a contract or any type of task order. So that has to come to the commission. And then a lot of them are like rezoning requests that are initiated by the community, either a residential person or a business that wants to rezone or even annex into the city. And that goes through a process with our planning board staff and the planning commission, which is separate, but ultimately, the board, does that. So I think, there's so much involved with running the city, but because of our purchasing policy, which I think is a good thing, I think there should be, limits and checks and balances on myself and the team. And so because of that, there are things that do come to the commission that are necessary for the running of the city. And, it needs to happen. The timeline needs to be determined by those that are charged with the day-to-day operation of the city. But it's really that financial and policy checks and balance, I think, that the board serves. So just as y'all move forward with that, I think that's a key distinction, because, if we had to get pre-sign off or have the elected policy and financial oversight board approve everything, I mean, there's a ton of stuff that we do that would not get done. I mean, I know government moves slow, but it is more difficult when you have a group of people versus a single executive.
Oh, yeah.
So with all due love and respect.
So if a city just to kind of key in on the opposite end of the spectrum on that one, if a city goes into what a normal person would consider bankruptcy, the state actually imposes a financial board on top of the council or commission, and not so much as a punitive measure, but I mean, talking with elected officials that serve under a financial review board, it does feel punitive. So I would suggest that we probably don't self-impose that we just keep that at the commission level, but the commission is the financial review board. So just throwing that out there.
So thank you for coming today. If you ever see overgrowth of bushes or a park that's unkept, or report those quickly via email. Snap a picture, send us a photo of what you see, and we can get those expedited quicker. And so I love this discussion. I think this builds a lot of progress and consensus. And
I'll give myself 850-630-9267.
Day or night, call Jonathan. He loves a phone call.
No, I mean,
Jonathan, I don't know how, honestly, I'm blown away at how well he communicates. He must get 5,000 emails a day, and I'm so impressed by him and thankful for him. He's unbelievable.
And he
answers social media. I don't know how he does it.
To the mayor's point, I mean, the number of times I've seen in this position over 18 months, people that come to a public meeting and share an issue, which is absolutely their right, okay? But if they'd have texted me 2 weeks prior, it would have been solved the next day. And so, 850-630-4267. Shoot me a text with a picture and we'll get it addressed.
Thank you so much for coming. Meeting's closed.
All right.